Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today is another viewer requested topic, and it comes from an individual who is struggling because their ex is starting to see somebody and they have kids, so that adds a little bit more extra complexity into this. So I want to dive into this and just kind of hit a few key points that we all need to remember when we're dealing with stuff like this, and to help keep us, kind of grounded in the right spot with this. The first thing to hit is, even though logically we know that this person is bad for us, that this situation isn't good, oftentimes our hearts are still kind of stuck in the relationship and attached to the person. So when they start to move on, or they start to do other things, and it really doesn't matter what it is. I mean, in this particular example, we're talking about them seeing somebody else, but the reality of it is, no matter what they're doing, whenever they're basically kind of moving on with their life and doing something, it's typically going to bother you just because of that attachment that you're still struggling with. And the first thing that you really have to remember on this is, you really have zero control of whatever your ex is going to do. Who they're going to see, what they're going to do, how they're going to act, who they're going to engage with, hang out with, whether they do things that you approve of or not. Very often they're going to do exactly the opposite of what we would hope that they would do, and it makes it really tough. This can include things like on the topic of this particular video, which is of them seeing someone else, but it could be if they decide that they're going to hang out with the biker crowd, or they're going to start to get, if you're not into tattoos, a bunch of tattoos, or if they're going to just do something or engage in activities that you would have never approved of. Now, the thing is you have to remember that we have zero control over whatever they do. All those things I just listed, we have no control. And even if we have children, oftentimes if we have children, it still extends into that. We do not have any ability to control what they do, who they see. We can have opinions. We can wish that they would not subject our children to certain things, but there's absolutely nothing we can do about that. Now, conversely on that means that there's nothing that they can do about whatever we're doing, but typically they are going to try to insert themselves. The first thing you need to remember is that the narcissistic personality type is going to be solely focused on maintaining their illusion and whatever is important to them. One of the key things that you need to remember is their whole world is based on an illusion, and that extends to their relationships that they have. It's one of those things where they will project out to the public that everything is great because their whole lives are based on illusion. One of the things I often try to remind people of is, whenever we were first in these relationships with these people, they did the same thing with us. So you should expect that they're going to do the exact same thing with a new person. Now, there are some caveats on this, to where if they never really pumped you up, so to speak, and they're saying that this new person in this long laundry list of people is their new soulmate, the best person ever, all those things, just remember that it's part of their illusion of what they're trying to set up. So although it's tough to see them in these new relationships and doing perceived well, we have to keep it in perspective of what it really is. Okay, so for those folks who have children, the one thing that you absolutely have to do on this is make sure that you have the best, most stable, loving environment and relationship with your child. I don't care whether you have them full-time, part-time, hardly ever get to see them, every other weekend, or whatever the case may be. You want to give them stability. The narcissistic ex is going to continually add chaos into their child's life, and you can counter that by providing stability. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the kids are going to come running to you that they'll see that your situation is so much better, but it does pay off in spades, and it does give your kids that stability, and hopefully it'll allow them to open up to you about what's going on, how they're feeling, what's really happening, what they're concerned about, all those type of things, so that they don't feel isolated and they don't feel like they can't talk to you about the situation. Now, ideally, if you can get your child a therapist to help them deal with this, that would be the best case scenario. But oftentimes, especially if you don't have majority custody, or maybe, or even if it's 50-50, convincing the ex to start that up, oftentimes is going to be really tough unless you get it written in early in the court decree to make sure that's in there. On a side note, if that is the case, if you are really into this, I would highly encourage you to add some type of provision for that if you think and if you support therapy, just so that it makes it a little bit easier. Because if the other person has the no ability, the exclusive no, then it'll create problems. In my situation, I was fortunate that, in my opinion, the ex was trying to use therapy to bolster her case, that the kid should just live with her full time, that I was a horrible human being, and so she was for it in the beginning, and then later on, whenever she realized that wasn't the case, she wanted to stop, and I was able to keep the kids going for quite a while, until I think it was like a year or two ago whenever they stopped going. So here's the thing, no matter what happens, it is really, really difficult to break free from somebody that you have a strong emotional attachment to. It doesn't matter what they've done to you, how they've treated you, how they've betrayed your trust. That connection is incredibly strong, and it's going to be difficult to heal from. I say that because it's good to remember that, so that when you're having these problems, you don't feel like it's more catastrophic than it is. This is something that the majority, not everybody, but the majority of the people on this channel have struggled with. It is incredibly common, and if you're in that mode, give yourself a break on that, because that is incredibly normal. So on that, if you are struggling with this, I would highly encourage you to find a really good skilled therapist to help you. I know that in my situation, prior to this whole divorce, I was not a big proponent of therapy. I thought it was silly. I thought it was pointless. How in the world would talking to somebody for 45 minutes to an hour every couple of weeks really help? When you find somebody who really understands this and really can help you deal with this, it can be really helpful. And so if you've never thought about doing therapy, I would encourage you to do that. Hopefully, if you have a therapist, they're a good quality therapist who really understands what you're going through and can really help you, because that is what will make a huge difference in your situation going forward. Now, one other thing I want to mention, be honest with yourself. Now, this is a tough one, because you can get into a mode like I did early on with this, is that I was so convinced that the betrayal that happened and the viciousness of the smear campaign and all the crap with court, that I basically hated this person, meaning my ex, and that I could have never, that the whole relationship was fake, all those different things. But fundamentally, I wasn't honest with myself with how tough this really was and how hurt I really was. I say this because I know that I was basically lying to my friends, my family. I was even lying to myself. There was one point where the kid's therapist, I said something, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're still attached, you're still in love with her." And it really angered me. And I wish I would have been able to address that better, and then address it with my own therapist, that I was still really attached, and I needed to detangle from that. So when you're working, even when you're working on just yourself, being able to be honest so that you really know what you're working on and you really know what you need to do is really critical to help you through this. So just one thing I want to mention, I want you to think about, because it's although that sounds like something, basically easy to do, it can actually be pretty tough. Okay, the other thing I want to mention is, if you are really, really, really struggling with this, like I was in the early parts of this, consider other types of things to help you. A couple that I know that I tried was EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I had a really hard time with that because it was very emotional for me at the time, but I still believe there's a lot of potential in that technique, and if I ever had another backslide, I would definitely consider doing it. The other thing that I did use that I've talked about before is hypnosis, and I'll leave a link to those resources in the card below or card above and in the description. But that can be really helpful. To be perfectly honest, I think hypnosis played a really big role in helping me get through this, because when I started that, I was circling the toilet bowl and I was making very little progress. That really started to help me break free, to break those ties, and to start reprogramming basically my subconscious to kind of pivot to myself and start focusing on my well-being and my future, as opposed to constantly ruminating about the ex. So consider that if you're really struggling, because it could help you. And bottom line, you want to help yourself get through this as quickly as possible. and heal as much as possible as you can as you're going through it. Finally, the other thing I want to mention on this is just remember that most people are going through this. You know, rolling back up to what the original question was with this person's ex seeing someone else, I think that probably over 80% of us struggle with this. I've seen it so many times in the comments whenever the ex is with a new person and they seem so happy, or they're gallivanting around the world having fun, or they're doing basically anything that they want, and it's driving the point home that we had no importance, that we were completely, are being completely rejected by them, and it just really hurts. A lot of us go through this, and it's something that I think it's really important to realize that it's really common. So when you're struggling with this, you are absolutely not alone. There are a lot of people going through this right now. There are a lot of people who've healed from this, and oftentimes, unfortunately, when you're talking to people around you, they don't necessarily understand what you're going through. And even if they do, a lot of times when people heal from this, they don't want to address it anymore. Once they've done, they're like, they don't want to think about it. They don't want to ruminate about it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to relive it. Part of the reason with that is because they haven't healed from it, and viewing your story and going down what you're dealing with is triggering for them on what they've dealt with. So keep that in mind too. That's also a really good indication to check to test how you're doing on your healing. Are you still triggered? I'll make another video about that. I know I talked about that in last week's live stream, but I just want to make a quick note of that. So the thing on this is, go easy on yourself when you're going through this. Don't beat yourself up. Don't feel like everything is catastrophic and, you know, like your kids are going to get hurt, and I mean all these different things that you can go through. Just be easy. Take it easy on yourself. You've gone through a traumatic experience. You're trying to heal from it. You are going to have all these triggers and are going to keep, like in this situation, what we were just talking about, that are going to keep bringing things up. Give yourself time to process and deal with this. Give yourself time to grieve the whole process. Give yourself time to heal from it. All of this doesn't happen in a day. You're not going to heal overnight, and it's a gradual process. So in effect, kind of embrace it, and don't beat yourself up when you're not feeling the way you would hope to feel. I've often used the analogy of whenever you get hurt, and when a physical injury, it's along the same lines. You can't expect to run a marathon the day after you break your leg. Same type of thing. You have to emotionally heal for this to be able to get back to the person you want to be, get back to the genuine person you are, and to get your life back. All right, so this is going to wrap this video up. If you think that this could help somebody, please consider sharing it to them. Maybe it will help them with what they're dealing with. If you're struggling with this, or you have some techniques that have helped you, put those in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel and you think that this could be helpful, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell notification so that YouTube tells you what's going on. And I will chat with you on the next video. Take care.